What if I told you that one battle, just 4 days, changed the entire course of the Pacific War in World War II? A battle that not only crippled the Japanese Navy, but also stopped their plans for further conquest in the Pacific. The Battle of Midway was one of the most decisive and game-changing moments of World War II. But how did a tiny island, barely known to most, become the center of one of the most pivotal battles in history? Let's dive into how this battle shifted the entire balance of power in the Pacific and altered the fate of nations. It's June 1942, and the Pacific War is in full swing. The Japanese Imperial Navy has already conquered vast swaths of territory from China to the Philippines to Indonesia. But now they have their sights set on Midway Atoll, a small chain of islands about halfway between Hawaii and Japan. Why Midway? To the Japanese, Midway was an important strategic target. It would give them control of a central point in the Pacific, allowing them to dominate the area and potentially finish off the US Navy. The Japanese had already shocked the world with their attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, and now they planned to deal another blow to the Americans. But they didn't realize that the Americans knew their plan. Intelligence was about to become the game changer. The Japanese were confident in their superiority at sea. They had already destroyed much of the Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor, and their navy was the most powerful in the world. Their strategy for Midway was simple. They would launch a two-pronged attack, with one force drawing the American fleet into battle, while a second force would hit Midway itself. They believed that with a quick, decisive strike, they would cripple the American ability to strike back. However, what the Japanese didn't know was that the US Navy had cracked their code. The Americans knew the Japanese were coming, and they had a plan to strike first. Thanks to the code breakers at Pearl Harbor, the Americans were able to predict the exact timing and target of the Japanese attack. Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, commander of the Pacific Fleet, now had an opportunity to set a trap. The US Navy secretly positioned their fleet, including 3 aircraft carriers, in a position where they could ambush the Japanese. The Japanese came in expecting a routine victory, but what they didn't anticipate was the American air superiority and the decisive strike waiting for them. The battle that ensued would be a devastating turnaround for the Japanese. On June 3, 1942, the battle began. The Japanese launched their initial airstrikes on Midway, but the American forces were ready. American bombers and fighters took off from the carriers, and in a series of coordinated attacks, they began to strike the Japanese fleet. The real turning point came when American bombers targeted the Japanese aircraft carriers. In a stunning series of attacks, they were able to sink 4 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, in a matter of hours. These carriers were the heart of the Japanese Navy, and their loss was catastrophic. Not only were the ships gone, but also many of the elite Japanese pilots, the men who had been the backbone of Japan's air superiority. The Americans, despite losing the USS Yorktown and suffering significant damage, were able to turn the tide. The Japanese, now crippled, could not replace their lost carriers or pilots. Their plans for further expansion in the Pacific were shattered. The Battle of Midway was a decisive victory for the United States. The loss of 4 aircraft carriers crippled Japan's ability to project power in the Pacific. The Japanese Navy, once thought to be unbeatable, was suddenly at a severe disadvantage. But perhaps even more important was the shift in morale. The Japanese, who had been on the offensive since 1941, now found themselves on the defensive. The Americans, on the other hand, gained a massive psychological victory. The battle marked the beginning of the Allied comeback in the Pacific. The Battle of Midway didn't just change the course of the war, it changed the way wars would be fought. It demonstrated the importance of intelligence and the power of naval aviation in modern warfare. The US Navy, by sinking those 4 carriers, severely weakened Japan's ability to fight back. In the larger picture, Midway allowed the US to shift to the offensive. Over the next 3 years, the Allies would island hop across the Pacific, eventually leading to the defeat of Japan. The Battle of Midway stands as one of the greatest victories in military history. The Battle of Midway was not just a victory in battle, it was a turning point in history. It showed that with the right combination of intelligence, strategy, and courage, the tide of war could be changed. The victory at Midway not only weakened Japan, but gave the Allies the momentum they needed to eventually win the Pacific War. Sometimes, the course of history can change in just a few days, and in this case, 4 days at Midway were enough to alter the fate of nations. The battle serves as a reminder that in war, information is power, and the ability to act decisively can make all the difference.